changes or corrections to the agenda? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I want to change.
Okay.
I just want to move consent agenda D, 3D, as an individual item.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Okay, give me just a second, let me. Right.
You don't need that request. You can just leave
Okay,
that
so,
out. So we're going to announce that on 3D is going to be separate
Okay.
action items 4A.
okay, 3D will now be an action item 4A. Okay,
And if you will refresh your computers, you will see that.
do I need a separate motion on? Okay. All right, Mr. Elsie, do we have any visitors present?
No visitors signed in.
Okay,
We need to vote on accepting the
that's what I was thinking. I knew I messed it up. All right, do I have a motion approving the amended agenda?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is the 2 consent agenda.
Thank you. We are grouping several routine items into a single consent agenda. Any board member may request that any or all items on the consent agenda be removed and considered as a separate item. If no such request is made, all items on the consent agenda may be approved by a single action of the Board of Trustees. I'm recommending 2A through Z and 3A through F for approval.
Is it 3A through E?
E, sorry,
Yeah,
I
we
did not
just had
refresh
that one
yet.
removed. Okay, do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Or is there any discussion? I'm sorry. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is 4A.
From this particular, this is the one that we had the first reading on, and I believe Ms. Black had pulled it off about the 1 year at the alternative school after coming back from expulsion for possession of a gun. And from my perspective, I wanted to make sure we took a very hard stance on possession of a gun in the school. That says we do not accept this under any circumstances. So that's why it would be not only expulsion, but then when they come back to have a year to show proper rehabilitation before reentering the regular school setting.
And is that an actual school, I mean, an actual year? Is it a school year? So if they're at the, after January and they get expelled for the rest of the year and they come back, or they come back before the end of the school year, do they have to be out then they still come back to the alternative center? Do they have to then still stay out for a whole year?
It depends on your definition of stay out. They would be educated at the alternative school for a full year, but not in the regular school setting.
Right, so if they were out and if we expelled them in January, they come back in March, they go to the alternative school, right? They
Yes.
still have another
Full year
full year
in the alternative
in the
school.
alternative school.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I just was trying to make sure.
And I'm, just clarification from my end, the policy as I interpret it doesn't necessarily mandate that because when it comes to offenses such as this, typically it's expulsion for a calendar year. Correct? And then we would follow that with same calendar year in an alternative education setting, right?
Correct.
But there's no mandate that at the culmination of that year, if said individual is still not demonstrating the behaviors that we want them to demonstrate, they have to come back then.
Correct. They would reapply to our discipline committee.
Mhm.
So it'd be the reverse order of just how they got expelled, then it would come to you from the discipline committee in that scenario.
But they cannot apply prior to that for an exception.
They cannot, through this policy, apply.
Okay.
That's correct.
I can vote for it twice, I would.
So I do have a question. So since, I think it said there's the first reading, this will be the second reading, correct? How many readings are there? Because there's, I guess the question there is, we should most certainly take gun possession extremely serious. There's no doubt, absolutely zero tolerance on that. But I guess when I read some of the things that we're gonna talk about tonight, I read the 1 year piece that the Opportunity Center. So it feels like that piece, I feel like there's some more discussions on that, at least from my perspective. I mean, I totally agree that they should not go back in the regular school setting. That's absolutely, got to protect the school and the students and them too. So I guess the question, how many readings are there before we vote to approve?
This is the recommendation for the vote.
Yes,
It's only 2 readings.
so it depends on the method, right? Like this is considered a new policy, okay? So a new policy, we're gonna have a first reading where we discuss that, get feedback, give opportunities for change if needed, et cetera. Second reading would be the action reading. If it's a standing policy
Okay.
and we're just amending that, we can do that on a singular session. But a new policy, which this is, we're gonna have a first reading and then an action reading.
So there's not really 2 readings.
So that would be my next question. So on a gun, firearm,
Mhm.
it makes perfect sense that we have what I call zero tolerance for bringing a weapon to school. Now, that policy as itself, we're talking, is it strictly guns? Because I read through it, is it strictly guns? But, what if it's not necessarily gun? What if it's another disciplinary type action? Are we changing because we're saying, when you're over, so you follow me?
This particular one is specifically for firearms. There are other policies that address other weapons, yes, and we do handle those differently.
So that's what I'm piece. This is strictly
Mhm.
fire.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions or comments on 4A? All right, do you have a motion on 4A?
So moved. Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. 5-0. All right. Moving on to item 5A, our informational reports. Everyone's had a chance to take a look at the vandalism report, discipline report, and we have the construction update. Do we have any questions or comments on any of these informational items?
No.
All right, moving on to 5B.
This is a new policy that is required by law. Whenever the legislatures made their opportunity for retired teachers to return back to the school setting and still be able to draw their PERS retirement, this is our policy to meet the law that's usually written. And it's from the MSBA sample policy that we're proposing. And this is first reading, no action because it's a new policy.
Okay, does anyone have any comments or questions about the policy?
I get a simplistic question from my standpoint that I'm gonna fire off in both directions. I mean, in my mind, it seems from an outsider's perspective, this is something the state of Mississippi should have done 10 years ago. We lose a lot of qualified retirees to neighboring states, especially somewhere like we live, Alabama, Louisiana, and is there something I'm missing here, like detrimentally from a fiscal standpoint or anything, or?
Fiscally, not necessarily.
Okay.
But, we talked about it when this came out. For example, it's 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that if you come back under this statute or just, you can, like when we have our teachers that come back and do tutoring. If you come back and do this, then you can't come back and do anything else. I mean, you have kind of, so as long as the employee that's coming back is in full understanding of what they can and can't do if they come back under person of this piece of it, for us,
And really, this policy or this idea of this has always been out there. This is a cap.
Correct.
So this has always been available for those teachers to come back and work, and they could work earn half of what they've made when they've left. This is just a cap that you're not gonna come back for another 20 years working part-time or whatever, because they want full-time teachers in those positions. So this has always been there, ma'am. It's just a
We've
cap
always
of
been
what
able
they're
to bring
doing.
retired
Well,
teachers back.
what she's saying, yes, we've always been able to do part-time
Part-time,
for less than 50% or less of what they make. And
right,
this actual law, I think, is a really good first step for the state of Mississippi.
mhm,
I do think there needs to be some more look into it, because right now, you could make, in our district, you would make almost as much working part-time as you would doing this.
mhm,
So I would think you'd be much more likely to just work part-time instead of doing this.
Mhm.
But this is a great first step for, I think, state of Mississippi in retaining some of these, especially teachers that are under that 25 years, and they may be, 48 years old, and they still got a lot of time they want to work.
mhm,
If we could get those back, we would love to have them.
mhm.
So I think it's a great first step. I think that maybe there needs to be a little bit more adjusting to it to really help districts.
And I guess make sure I got my head wrapped around it. So like previously, if I had a tested subject in a certain building that was struggling, right? And I had an employee with X experience that had retired, I could not bring them in to lead that classroom, correct? Like they couldn't be that history teacher. They were part-time.
They could be there half a day,
They could be there half a day,
but
right?
not all day,
Okay, gotcha.
Correct.
So that's what I was making sure I was right on. We hadn't had.
or half the number of days, either way.
Right, okay, gotcha. Okay.
Any more discussion? All right. Item 5D, school improvement, 5C, gifted program, 2024-2025 overview.
Just a requirement that y'all know what we do gifted wise. So if you have questions, we'll be happy to try to, Ms. Damon's gonna be our expert in that area. If we have questions on that one.
Anybody have any questions or comments on that?
So I do have a question, and I think it's great that we have this program first. But as far as participation of students in this program, is this for the Pascagoula-Gautier School District? Is this a program that's widely known and widely used inside the district?
You want to give a real
Yes, they
brief
have
on
to-
how
they
they
have to
test in?
They have to qualify, so we mass test in first and second grade, for first and second grade. And then, of course, they could be teacher recommended in third, fourth, fifth, or sixth grade, second through sixth grade program. So as long as they meet the criteria to be what the state requires as gifted, then they're in the program. They have, of course, parents have to agree to allow them to go because it is a pull-out program. So one day a week, they go to gifted class rather than another one that's based on the schedule of their school.
And so, and as they get older, the program gets a little bit more and more difficult, right? Because instruction gets a little bit more challenging, and so that day that you're missing, like it's Wednesday for my son, he is not at his home school, he's at Martin Bluff, right? So that instruction that is missed there, you're expected to be able to take that and regroup and move forward. But the things that they do in the program are really top notch. It's outside of the box, and so they get open to everyone, I guess, yes, as long as you meet the testing requirements.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
They look forward to that one day.
Yeah.
All right, item 5D, school improvement updates.
These are the same as you've typically seen for the last couple of years.
Does anyone have any questions on any of those items?
So our principals aren't coming in anymore. I'm gonna miss them. Just saying.
I'm here to answer questions. We provide the informational updates, but I'm definitely here to answer questions.
Anybody have any questions? All right, moving on to item 5E, our monthly financial reports. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the financial reports?
Jenna, what are we looking
This is what we usually, at August, the cash balance will slowly dip until we get in January, but
Any concerns, early concerns, anything that stood out to you that maybe we might not see right away? And
Well, in a couple of months, we'll have ESSER and some of these larger federal programs closed out for 2023. And so there's some indirect cost transfers, ask me again, and when we start looking at really September 30,
That's
we'll see how those goes. Because I think it will definitely help us with cash flow.
so we're not completely closed out from,
No, we are in the books for fiscal year
Right.
24, but in federal programs, we go more on the federal federal fiscal year. So we have a section for 30. to talk about that.
All right. Moving on to 6C, we need approval to determine executive session. You have one exception to board policy, JBCCA, and 3 recommendations for expulsion. Do I have a motion?
So,
All right, is there a second? Okay, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you guys. And meeting is closed.
yeah, got your big certificate. I'll be all ironed up.